concept of fixed leadership or somebody being fixed in a leadership position. So what do we expect from leaders? We have our expectations, and that expectations also depend in context. Here at Beacon House, you might have some expectations from your leaders. At the University of Leicester, where we work, we might have very different expectations from our leaders. We need to think and have it very clear even in our minds how we conceptualize that leader and what we are expecting from them. And that will enable us to engage and critique the leaders as well. If we are not aware what our expectations are, we will simply follow and obey the leaders. And that's not the good way to respond to leadership. When you are just obeying, we have to get out of this concept of obeying the leaders. We have to reconceptualize leadership as a critical position where you critique the leaders and you debate with them and you share with them how to go about leadership. And that is where the whole concept of leadership development and professional development and training of the teachers comes in. I think teacher training again needs to be used for these specific purposes. What are the purposes? What are the goals for which we are using professional development? Earlier today, Qasim raised the question of professional development courses, are they really contributing anything to enhancing educational achievement? I think it depends how those professional development courses are conceived and delivered. Because if you send somebody, say, to Washington or to London on a professional development program, and they don't, whatever they learn there, they don't try to relate that to, say, our cities, our rural areas, our villages, our infrastructures, I don't think that you have invested wisely. So when you send your teachers on professional development programs anywhere in the world, I think there should be pre-sessionals for them to help them understand what is the aim of their going onto that professional program, what they need to understand, what they need to take from here. And because I deal with most of the sort of these professional development programs, developing educational leaders and managers, and people from all over the world come there. I've got some very large programs where I'm program leader. And I've got some students coming from the world, all over, bringing their own issues. And we try to relate the concepts and practices to their context. Because that is what can be of some use to them when they go back to their own countries, to their own specific situations. If somebody is coming from China, they have got a very strict, almost comparable to Pakistan, but even more strict hierarchical structure, very strict. And nobody can think of sort of saying no to a senior. Now, how that is to work within a distributed leadership concept? So, just giving people what are the new theories, new concepts, new practices doesn't really relate to all contexts. That is where our own critical abilities, and that's what I said earlier, we need to develop critical abilities. We need people to have this analytical mind, analyze the concepts, analyze the theories, analyze what is being given to you as the theory, as the practice, and see whether that fits within your own specific context. And that is innovation. You see, when we talk about innovation, and I will skip some of things about education, so I skipped some of the slides there about Islam because we have already talked about them, but I think when we talk about innovation, it's a new way of adding something to the existing systems, to the existing practices, to the existing theories. And that will mean very, very different things in every context. Innovation in USA is very different from what will be an innovation. For example, in Bangladesh, I was telling Qasim earlier that in Bangladesh they have got those boat schools, floating schools or boat schools. Now that is an innovation for them. They have currently got about 9, over the last 10 years when the reports came up that in Bangladesh, because of the rise in the water level, by 2020 or 25, about 15 to 20% of the land will be underwater. So somebody came up with an excellent idea of boat schools. And by now, over the last 10 years, they have got 90 to 100 boat schools. Now that is an innovation. And that is leading education to the right direction. Something which responds to the needs, to the issues, to the challenges in your own context. What can be an innovation here in the context of floods and in the context of earthquakes? Perhaps it can be having those sort of buildings which are prefabricated, which can be relocated, moved from one place to another. That can be an investment, instead of having sort of 4 brick walls and a roof which perhaps the next earthquake or next flood will totally demolish. I mean, that is the innovative way of thinking. Think on a wider scale. Think for the future. We can't live in our own safe zones hoping that the world is going to stay the same. No, it's changing, and we have to accept that, and at a very fast pace. And obviously, not just the natural disasters that can challenge our abilities of leading education for tomorrow. It's the economic and social changes. Huge economic and social drive. The whole society is changing. And nowhere in the world the societies are the same. I mean, in the West also we go, there are these emerging societies with multiple ethnicities, multiple faiths. They are very complicated societies. And responding to the needs of these societies. I mean, I remember there was a symposium in Germany where they asked me to talk about faith schools which are emerging in large number in the West. Islamic religious schools which are emerging in America and in Europe. In America, in the last 15 years, they have gone up to 400 Islamic faith schools. And they are worried where this will lead education. Those people who are coming out of these faith schools and those people who are being educated in mainstream education system, how will they create cohesive societies of tomorrow? How will they be living jointly in a society tomorrow? And we have to think of that. We will be living in, our younger people, or we human beings, they will be living in the future societies which will be multiply diverse tomorrow. So we can't, and the more people are living together, the more they are becoming aware of their differences, faith differences, racial differences, ethnic differences. See, that is the paradox. That on the one hand, we are coming together through communication, through developments in the field of technology, through global movement, through mobility, and on the other hand, we are becoming very, very aware of our own differences from each other because of enhanced awareness. So to cope with that, we need to learn. And when I went to that symposium in Germany, there were people from faith schools and there were people from state schools. And they were both talking about their best practices. Faith schools, some of them rightly claim that they are producing very high achieving children, Muslim children, as compared to Muslim children performing in state schools in UK and in many parts of Europe. And my request to both the groups of schools was, why don't you share practice? Tell them what is the best that you are providing in their schools, and ask them what is the best that they are providing, and learn from each other, and think of tomorrow's school where they will probably all be together, and they can maintain their Muslim identity, and they can maintain whatever their identity is, but they can also achieve their human potential to the best, and they can become best members of the future societies, which will be more and more collective societies. And we have to think of that. I don't believe in becoming westernized or easternized. I think we all have our own value systems. We all have our own philosophies. We need to retain that. But at the same time, we need to respect other people's values and we need to respect their systems. And that is what we need to teach. And that is what is the leadership role. Bringing people together, collaborating, bringing people across these differences to learn to live together. So, obviously, that is a developmental aspect of education. And that is, I think, the leadership role to develop minds and systems and structures to that level where people are capable of achieving that. You see, another aspect or theme which was given to me Bob, you will remind me when the time is getting closer, right? Right. I don't want to sort of... thank you. Another thing which I was asked to talk about the concept of instructional leadership. So, besides setting the vision, besides setting the guidelines, or creating a learning environment, another important and significant role of educational leader is enhancing learning. You see, I have some reservations about instructional leadership. I have put that up because the instructional leadership was a part of the theme title that was given to me. Because I personally think that instruction is a very mechanical activity. And I believe more in learning rather than in instruction. And I think that, as earlier we said, I don't think that learning comes only through educators. We learn everywhere. We learn from our families, we learn from our environment, we learn from our friends. We learn when we are walking on the road, we are learning. We learn everywhere. And that is what, and mindset. You see, and that takes us back to what I was saying earlier. Open people's mind, make them critical and analytical. They should just not... I remember talking to my doctoral and master's students in our sessions and seminars, and I would state something very simple and say that, did you ever think about that? Oh, no. But yes, that's right. We can think about that. See, that is it. Make people think. You see, I keep going back and back to the religious references, but the word which is most often used in the Quran is tafakkaru. Think. Again and again. It invites you, asks you to think. And that is, you see, when it is an ability which the more you use, the stronger it becomes. It is one of those unique abilities, unique potentials, that its use improves it, enhances it. Develop that thinking ability, that critical ability. And because sometimes, you see, for example, when I'm in the class with the students and sometimes they come up with an answer or with a view which I don't agree, I never say that you are wrong. I always say, that is your view, this is my view, think on both, and then come up with your views, with your arguments, which you think is stronger. And I'm open to accepting their views as well. Their views might be much more applicable in their own context. So you don't do justice to your colleagues, to your friends, to your learners by telling them this is the right way. There is nothing right and nothing wrong. It is how and what works best in a situation, in alliance, underpinned by the values of that society, of that context. You see, something which may be very, very acceptable in the Western context may be totally unacceptable in our context. So we have to recognize those things. And we're talking about instructional leadership. It was a concept which came up in late 70s, early 80s. Different models, like Sijuani's model of instructional leadership. Then there is a more recent model in the American National Association of Elementary School Principals, which have given up. See, the basic concepts which are in the instructional leadership, they talk about sort of different roles of educational leaders. When you get the PowerPoint handouts, you can look at them. I'm not going to repeat all those things. But you will see that it is a multiple role. And that takes us to another question. What is the role of educational leaders? Is it just sharing, enhancing learning?